Hello and welcome to the ABC Always Be Consulting podcast presented by Thomas Ryan Real Estate. Throughout this segment, I will sit down with industry professionals and really dive into their specific aspect of a real estate transaction and beyond. The ultimate goal is to inform you, the buyer or seller, so when the time comes for you to navigate the sale of a property or the purchase of a new one, you'll be better informed and ultimately more comfortable throughout the process. If you have specific topics that you are interested in learning about, or you have specific industry professionals you'd like me to interview, please let me know. I can be reached via email at thomasryan@kw.com or via Instagram at thomasryanrealestate. Hope you enjoy the show. Hello and welcome. This is the first episode of Always Be Consulting. Today I'm sitting down with Brandon Bianchi and Kevin Mckee with Chicago Title, and we're going to talk about all things title. So as we get into it, let's first get to know you guys. Kind of who are you, where are you from, a little backstory as far as how you got in the business.
Great. I'm Brandon Bianchi, born and raised in the city of Tustin, grew up through the Tustin Unified School District. Went on from there to get a business degree in marketing from Cal State Fullerton. I'm married, been married to my wife Christy for 14 years. We have 3 children together, Braden, who's 12, my daughter Camden, who's 9, and Bryson, who is 4 today, actually shares a birthday with Kevin. We service the Tustin area. I've been in the industry, in the title industry for 10 years, in the real estate industry for 15. I did loans before getting into title.
Okay. Did you do anything before loans?
No, yeah. So coincidentally, we were recruited, both Kevin and I, to go do loans for a brokerage when we were doing this was a part-time seasonal deal we were doing, but we were doing a Christmas lighting business.
Okay.
And so we would, from December to January, we're working after hours after our regular job of installing lights, taking them down, servicing them. But prior to that, I did a lot of customer service type stuff. I worked for Quicksilver, and then I did a maintenance kind of job for the Tustin School District for a while as I was going through college.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Kevin?
Kevin Mckee. I grew up in Tustin also. Went through the Tustin Unified School District, got a business and marketing degree from Vanguard University. Been in title now 15 years. Like Brandon said, we've known each other since junior high and worked together for going on 20 years, probably more than that. Been married to my wife Lauren for 12. Have a daughter Riley who is 11 and a son Chase who's 8.
Very nice. When you say you work the Tustin area, what does that exactly mean for those that may not know in the title business?
So title reps are typically territory based. So our territory is Tustin, Orange, Villa Park. It expands out, as you can imagine, in any kind of sales job. That expands out to customers are moving. It's forever changing the environment. So, once you establish a working relationship with somebody, we have clients that we really never see. We communicate over email and phone. But it's just once they become part of your team, then they're attached to you, and it's more so they work with you because of the relationship, not necessarily the area. So as people move on with their lives, the territory kind of changes as well.
Yeah, I can attest to that. I was in the Newport Beach, the Irvine office, and now I'm out in Chino Hills, and we've maintained that relationship for I don't know how many years.
Yeah.
Funny story, actually. The first time the way we got in contact was Brandon drove a key out all the way out to Chino, to my house in Chino, for the first time, and that's kind of when I knew, all right, these are the guys that I need to work with. They're going to drive out to Chino from Tustin to bring out a key on the weekend. So without even any business-oriented or anything like that. And so the company you work for is currently Chicago Title.
Right.
Have you always been with Chicago Title? How long have you been with them? Kind of what's the backstory on that?
Kevin and I both have been really a team since 2010. So we were with First American Title and moved over to Chicago. We were at First American. Kevin was there for years. I was there for 7 years, and then we've been at Chicago going on 3 years now.
Okay.
Both great companies. Just differences of some minute differences in what each company does, but both great companies.
Gotcha. And so, how long in the business individually again?
In title, 10 years.
15.
10, 15. Okay, gotcha. So how does your team work exactly? I think it may be a little atypical. Typically, title guys are kind of on their
maybe on their own, maybe with a team, but as a partnership? How does that work out? How do you structure that?
I would say our relationship is very unique. I think you mentioned, but we've known each other since sixth grade.
Yep.
So it's very unique. It's not just a partnership in work. Like we have a relationship that extends past that. So the work side of it is easily done. We both know we both go out and give 110% every day. So anything that comes in, we split everything down the middle. So we're both working for the same goal. Our families are friends outside of this. It's a different, unique relationship than you see the traditional team have. But our team works in just that. Like there's just 100% trust, and we both know we're after the same goal every day. And we do have an inside guy, Russell, who works with us, and he's inside. He's checking the programs, checking the data. So he's a lot of that internal help for us, while Kevin and I are out in the field daily.
Got it. Speaking of that, what does your day-to-day look like? What's your day-to-day?
We're usually out the door probably 7:45, 8 o'clock in the morning, and we typically try to divide and conquer. So we try not to be in the same offices in the same area at the same time.
Okay.
Mondays, typically for me, is kind of the Anaheim Hills to Orange to Villa Park, Santa Ana areas, and then Brandon will be in Tustin on Mondays, and then Tuesdays we flip-flop.
And what are you doing? Just walking the street, or what?
We are seeing clients in their offices,
Gotcha.
and quite often a majority of our day is spent in parking lots, because while we attempt to go out and see people and make office visits and stay in contact with them, problems arise. Emails, phone calls, and whatnot. And so we'll pull over in a parking lot and just start answering emails one by one. And unlike others, we are actively involved with our clients. So you can call us, hey, just heard from escrow, we have this issue or whatnot. And so we will immediately jump in and get with the title unit, get with Russell to get this issue solved.
Yeah, I can definitely attest to that as well. I mean, I'll shoot you a text, email, whatever. I know you're not in the office or sitting right in front of the computer, yet 2 minutes later I have a property profile from most likely Russell.
Right.
What are you seeing in the market, like kind of this week, this month, or just kind of over the past few months? Like kind of what are you seeing? I know we chatted a couple weeks ago, and it was like a bunch of refis towards the end of the month trying to get through.
Yeah.
Obviously we're off a shift from the holiday season.
Yeah.
Those are well past us now, and we're kind of shifting into that pre-spring season. So kind of what are you seeing from your perspective as far as that goes?
It's busy. It's a good market right now with rates where they're at. It's extremely competitive rates. Money's very cheap. We're seeing for that normal holiday lull, we're seeing that's picked up sooner than it did in years prior, which is great. There is low inventory. Locally, there's low inventory, but the demand is still there. I mean, we're seeing cash offers over asking. The money's there. Everybody's been saying, oh, the market's going to take a turn. I haven't seen it come off the gas pedal at all. It's been a great market to be in and increasing over the years.
Yeah. Fair enough. Seeing some.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get into some more like title specific, like into the business questions.
Mm-hmm.
But just first off the bat, what is title insurance? What's the best definition for what that is?
Title insurance is basically anytime a property is bought, sold, or financed, a record of that transaction is filed in public archives. Much like that, any previous record is also recorded or filed in public archives, so any other transactions on that property. So what the title insurance companies do is we compile all this data through data sources, and we produce a report called the preliminary title report. We try to remedy anything on that report that we can through records. The remaining items that are still in existence are sent out on the report to escrow. Escrow then communicates with the seller to try to rectify any of those order demands, payoffs for any of the liens or encumbrances on that property. And their goal is to pass clear and marketable title to the new buyer. Now, what the title insurance policy does is it protects the buyer and the lender on the policy to protect them from any loss or any defect in title that comes up. It protects them from any loss. protects their loss and their legal fees.
Got it. All right. That was a very short way of explaining a lot of
It's
detailed
very
things.
it's very cumbersome. The whole process is, and I'm sure we're going to get into what is a claim and whatnot, but there's so many different examples that you can go through. So in a nutshell, that's what it is.
Now, in a transaction, who typically chooses title and who pays for it?
Typically around here in Southern California, we see that the seller works with their listing agent to choose a title company. Oftentimes, the listing agent will provide insight to, hey, this company or this sales rep or this team is a trusted part of my team, and I know that if a situation arises or hiccups happen, that I can turn to them and they can assist in getting the deal closed. So on a sale, typically, like I said, the owner and the listing agent would get together and choose the title company, and then again, standard to Southern California, typically the seller pays for it.
Got it. And what's the typical cost of title insurance?
There's not really a typical cost. It's a scale. In a sale, the owner's policy is based on the sales price. On the purchase side, for the buyer, if they're getting a loan, it would be the lender's policy, and that would be based on a loan amount. Also, same with the refinance. The refinance is based on the loan amount. So, as the liability or the sales price and loan amount increases, as does the title insurance cost.
Right, makes sense.
For an example, that $500,000 owner's policy is right under $1,600.
Okay.
And on that, if the buyer was putting 20% down, they'd have a $400,000 loan. And that loan policy, concurrent search, which is a whole different topic, but concurrently search with the owner's policy, that's about right under $800.
Got it. Now, like there's home warranties, different things like that. You're going to run down a closing statement when you're buyer or seller, and they'll look at the line items and be like, well, do I really need that? Is this needed? Now, is title insurance necessary? Do buyers need it?
It's necessary. We think you need it. I think the biggest testament to that is your typical lenders, Wells Fargo, B of A, Citibank. They're not loaning on the house without title insurance. So if that doesn't state it enough that we should have title insurance, I don't know what will. I mean, they're protecting their investment as the buyers should.
Now you said approximate cost, obviously sliding scale. Is that annual fee? Is that a biannual? How's that work out?
It's a one-time fee.
One-time fee. Got it. Okay. Let's see here. What does title insurance protect the homeowner's investment in case of a claim, or how?
Do you want to take that and I'll talk about the claim you just had?
The policy, it ensures that, as Brendan said prior, that you have a clear marketable title, that nothing is going to come up from the past. Unlike normal insurance products, which cover today, going forward, each time you make a payment, with title insurance, we insure today when you purchase the product, going back to, in essence, the beginning of time. So if somebody comes back to state claim in your property, or a creditor comes back and says, hey, the prior owner owed me money and now it's attached to your property, what we do is we protect against that. We say, no, we've issued you a policy saying that, in fact, nothing's owed, everything's good, don't worry. We step in, we will basically be your defense to that.
Well, yeah, that was kind of be my next claim is what are types of claims? So if you want to give an example or a rundown of...
We have a pretty relevant example that was recent. So there's a ton of fraud in the industry right now. So I'm going to run through an example and try to follow me on this. So a gentleman, we'll call him the fraudster. He was keeping an eye on a vacant house.
Okay.
So he found out who the owner was through records. It's all public records. Found out who the owner was, made a fake ID. He broke into the house, changed the locks. The power was on in the house. And then he found a forward-facing website. And we've all seen them where it's a sign at the end of the street or at the end of the off-ramp that says, hey, we buy your house, we fix them, all cash offer. He found one of those websites. He called the investor, said, hey, you want to meet me at the house? I want to sell my house. Yep, met him at the house. We can't go in, it's tenant occupied. Well, he had put some furniture in there, said it was tenant occupied. The investor made an offer on it. The guy took it, It was notarized, which is normally a check and balance on it, but the notary, who coincidentally after the fact we contacted, had said her stamp had been duplicated, but it wasn't reported yet, which is a problem. So we insured the policy for this investor. The investor went to sell, and somehow the real owner found out and said, "Hey, wait a second, I didn't sell that property." Well, so it's our job. We've since then made the investor whole, paid him his money back because he bought the property, and post-policy forgery and fraud is covered in your insurance. So we made the investor whole, and now obviously we're going to go after the gentleman that frauded us, and we're going to go after the money that way. Hopefully, it's still in the United States. I mean, with a lot of fraud nowadays, where you'll see on all of our outgoing emails from the title unit, it says, "Be careful of wire fraud." There's a lot of email hacking going on where, always call and check with your escrow. It's, I mean, you're doing the drill.
Encrypted emails
yeah.
and all kinds of things. Yeah, there's lots of different tactics that escrow's using and stuff like that.
Right.
The money going where it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah, very important. Touching back, I know it was a one-time fee, and how long does that last? How long does the coverage last?
While you own the house.
Yes,
while you own the house.
What is a title search? I know we kind of mentioned that at the beginning, and what kind of problems can it reveal? I know that's kind of touching base again, but what is title search when you say that?
We're going and searching public records, court cases, search a general index. We're searching easements, CC&Rs, which, just saying those things, we can talk about multiple claims based on a couple of those. But we go through and search all of these records, and we're finding stuff, including the owner's name, where a lot of times there's a similar name, which we'll get into, I'm sure.
I've heard that statement of information, right?
Yeah.
So what exactly does that mean?
Exactly.
It sounds very, serious.
So with the statement of information, we ask for it on every transaction. Both the buyer and the seller fill it out. What it is it asks for the last 10 years of your residential history, asks for some pertinent information, middle name, last four of your social, things like that, because oftentimes when you have a common name, let's say a John Smith, for example, we will search prior to issuing the final policy, we will search what's called the general index, where it's another source where data is compiled of liens that are attached to people's names. They may not have made it to the house or the home or the property yet, but it's in there that John Smith owes Bank of America credit card $50,000. They filed a judgment, it's against John's name, it just hasn't attached to the property. Well, if we were to insure a sale, Bank of America could come back to us as a title insurance company and say, John owed us $50,000, now therefore you owe us $50,000. So we search that general index, John's name, we take the statement of information, and there may be, let's say, 20 hits, we call them, where 20 potential liens against John's name come up. We take that statement of information, cross-reference it with the last four of the social, middle initial, residential history, which these things are typically noted on the judgment itself, and we can eliminate our seller, John Smith, from these other potential hits.
Got it. So this search, and to get a clear report, does it take 30-day escrow, or how long does that take?
Our typical turn times, it all depends on how many influx of orders have come in, right?
Sure.
But our typical turn times are about 2 days. We can always rush stuff out when we do get a cash deal. When escrow comes in and says it's a cash deal, we want to rush. We can produce a report in a day.
Okay.
But there is some well-being to taking our time with the search. We want to make sure it's right.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, if things haven't been searched in a long time, it's a little harder to document, get that information to us. So they're not all cut and dry, take 2 days, but some are quicker, some are a little bit longer.
Is that all? I mean, is there a lot of manpower in that? Is there a lot of technology and computerized, or how?
A lot of it's gone computerized, where there's title plants online, records online, but sometimes if you're going back into the, here in Old Town Orange, you're going back to 1910 that properties are around. So if you have to go back and search all the way back to the beginning of the existence of the home, then it does take some time, and it's a manual search.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, makes sense. Now, another thing that they're involved in is towards the end of the transaction, I'm calling Brandon saying, hey, did we close and record? So how does that process work? From day one of the transaction, obviously we do a title search, progress through, and then towards the end, towards closing, how does that process work with escrow involved?
So escrow is really the point man on it, I would say. Once we send the report to escrow, they're getting the demand, so like payoff demand for a loan, let's say. They're getting that. Once all the money's in, then they say, okay, we're ready to fund. It funds. We get the lender's money. That we send out the docs that are sent to us from escrow after the seller's doing their signing. Those documents, we're abstracting those, send them out to the county for recording.
What are those documents?
Like the grant deed. Okay. So we send that out to recording. Once we hear back from the county that we have confirmation of recording, that's typically when agents are exchanging keys at that point, unless there's, hey, they have 3 days after the fact. So that's your typical closing process. Escrow is really the point man on it, where they communicate with our title unit. But it's going back to that statement of information, that could be the number one delay in a closing, because sometimes we'll get that back. Like escrow sends that out in their paperwork initially, and sometimes we don't get that back till the day of closing, and then there's a judgment that pops up.
Right.
And that produces some problems.
Yeah. Very oftentimes we get a statement of information request and it's nothing, right? But, or at least in my experience, fortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, there could always be a possibility that it's the wrong John Smith.
And sometimes sellers aren't always honest with you out of embarrassment for financial situations or just life in general.
Yeah.
So they're not totally forthright with you. So we had one just recently where there was a $150,000 IRS lien. The listing agent did not know about it, and the seller, I think, quite frankly, was just trying to not acknowledge it, and maybe it'll go away.
Didn't think it'd get caught, but
yeah. And the day we were set to record, the SI came in that morning. We ran the SI, and sure enough, found it. So everybody's frantically running around trying to figure out what we're going to do when we're supposed to be exchanging keys, and this is supposed to be a happy day for a buyer. So it's like Brandon said, very, very, very important.
There's actually an interesting fact that we had on a flyer previously that talks about title insurance, and what at no cost to the taxpayer, we're collecting a lot of support judgments. We're collecting back tax liens and collecting just any judgment or any collection of funds that are due that haven't been collected upon. At no cost to the taxpayer, those title companies are going forward and saying, hey, this needs to be cleared before you sell your property. It's in the billions of dollars that they collect annually.
Right.
It's crazy. There's you never think about that side. I never thought about that before I got into title. And it's a pretty neat thing.
Yeah.
Child support, spousal support, IRS lien, property tax, state tax, all sorts of things that really, like Brandon said, at no cost to the consumer or taxpayer, we're clearing that up.
Got it. So we've closed escrow. Property's in my name now. Now what? What do I need to be looking out for? Obviously, the unfortunate event that I pass away. What happens with the property? How can I secure that? What's some advice as far as that goes?
Some of the best advice we can say, and through the tough times we've seen people go through, is putting your property into a living trust. Consult with an estate attorney, or that you can do them online some places, and put the property in a living trust. You will have to record the grant deed from yourself to the living trust, but it does help you avoid probate, which can cost a ton of money. I think there's a calculation, and I think it's the first 100,000 it's 4%, second 100,000 is 3%, and then up to the next 800,000 it's 2%. So that's just to have the property go through the process of probate. Then you sell it and pay the fees for selling the property as well. So it can be cumbersome. The process takes a lot of time. Where if it's in a living trust, we as the title company will then follow the provisions of the trust and say, okay, so and so's these two trustees are deceased. It's supposed to go to so and so. They have the right to sell on their own. So now we're following the provisions of that trust. So it's always been in the trust. There are some, I don't even want to say disadvantages to it, but there are where you have to keep information inputting it and taking it out of the trust. As a bank account cancels, you've got to pull that out of the trust. As you acquire a new bank account, it has to be put in. But a lot of those trusts have a space for manually writing that in.
Okay.
So it's pretty easy. You just have to stay on top of it.
Yeah. Just making sure it's accounted for.
Yeah.
So, what is? Can you go into detail about probate a little more? What exactly that means?
So it's the court's decision on who has the right to the property, whether there's a will. A lot of people think, well, I have a will and I'm in it, or my grandfather had a will and I'm the one that should inherit the property. The court still has to be the one to decide that. It can't just be because it's on a piece of paper, and there's a lot of checks and balances. And who made this will? Was it signed by our guy?
Were they in their right mind?
Right.
You know, were they sick? Were they dementia, Alzheimer's, things like that, where a family member can attest or claim that they weren't of capacity?
Got it. And then going back again, just how exactly would you go about getting a living trust? So,
contact an estate attorney, or LegalZoom has them. There's examples all over online. We did one for our house, and we just consulted an estate attorney. They range from $500 to $1,200.
very cheap in the long run.
In comparison, very cheap.
For you or your children.
Yeah.
Are there any topics or questions that I should have asked? You guys are inside of this every day and see different things that maybe you clean up before I even have a knowledge of them. Is there anything that sparks your memory?
I think there's a lot of things we do try to remedy before we send it out, but I think the takeaway is that we're not perfect. Things come up after the search is done. Things come up. There's off-record matters that we don't see. So the importance of title insurance, it's extremely important. It can help save the cost of the property plus the loan you put on it. And that's a big, could be a big number. And this is for this consumer going through this, some of them go through it maybe twice in their lifetime. They don't understand it, and I don't expect them to, but there's material out there. Like, we have a buyer's guide. You've seen it, that you can push that out to your client if they want it. It kind of goes through basically what we're talking about in detail, kind of goes through the process. It's good educational material, and I have to say, I know Kevin and I were talking about it. This is awesome you're doing this, and hopefully this turns into an educational series about the transaction.
Yeah, that's the goal. I mean,
it's
some of these questions obviously I know the answer to, but
right, yeah, you do, but hopefully that's pushed on to the consumer, and it's for as many times as they go through this, they need something like this. There's not like a set in stone place where they can go and say, okay, here's what's going to happen throughout my transaction. So it's a great resource for them.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, to your point, it's a required thing by a lot of lenders and stuff like that. They're not going to run on it, so you just figure, okay, I have to do it. But I kind of think of it like any other insurance, health insurance. Oh, I'm a healthy young guy, like I don't need health insurance, and then you get in an accident, you break your leg, and then you don't know you need it till you need it. Again, obviously you need it, but I think the living trust thing is a big takeaway. I think we've talked about this like every time we have a conversation. Like, this is a big push that you guys push with this. So definitely a good takeaway. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. First episode of Always Be Consulting. Well done, Gary Ginkle and Ross. Reference it. But so thanks, guys, and thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
Bye.